Hope you're well. Welcome to this little tutorial for my Patreon subscribers on how to use the Empress puppet that I've been working on this year. Now, just a quick proviso before we start. Some of the techniques in this puppet are, as of this recording, a little bit outdated since I've worked on her. There are some techniques that I've actually improved upon since this puppet's come out. The book, which I'm hoping to get out, start getting out by the end of the year, will have updated techniques from the bits and pieces that are contained within the Empress character. So some of the things will be lighter, easier to use than the creation of the character. I already tried to make her as light as possible, but I've been able to figure out better ways since then. So here we go. Now all you do to import a character is to make sure that the character is available through a library. If you don't know how to do that, you have to consult Toon manual. But once you've got it in your library, you just drag it into either the node view or the timeline. And I'm just dragging it into the node view. And I'll just make this a little bit more comfortable. So this is, I'll just do that, it's better, isn't it? This is her sort of subgroup here. And at the moment she has an erroneous composite here, which you don't really need, so you can delete that if you want. But I put that in there to make sure that it's this part, this node link that you plug into the scenes composite. And there, when you do that, there she is. The other one here, this is her master peg, which sticks out at the top, and that gives you the first keyframe there. Just create another keyframe just for fun. And this one, what you do is you plug the camera's peg, if you have a camera in your scene, into this peg, and then from there you can actually delete this peg entirely if you want to. It's up to you. It's you do or you don't have to. It's not really relevant, but you do have to couple the camera's peg up to this. The reason being is that if you select, in order to operate this character, you need to go into your preferences and you need to go to advanced and make sure that advanced display is selected, and that allows you to have more than one display visible. So at the moment we've got the default display here, and I've got another camera view over here, and I'm going to select the Empress MC for this window, and that gives me the console here. The reason I've coupled up the camera peg is because by doing so, if I zoom the camera in and out on this view, it zooms the camera in and out of her, but it makes sure that the console doesn't move. If I uncouple that, you'll see that both zoom in and out, and we don't want that. So that way we get the desired effect. We want the camera to move and not the console. Okay, now she's quite complicated to start with, but then when you actually start to work with her, she's incredibly user-friendly, really. There are a few little caveats, but you know, on the whole, she's actually pretty easy to use, I think. So what I'm going to do is start moving her from one of the frames, and you can see what she's capable of. So around here, any sort of shaded area here, you can grab hold of her and you can actually move the top part of her torso. You can move it around like that, and it naturally squashes and stretches a little bit like that. If you want to move any body part, you just select the either top or bottom part of it, and you will get a slightly different result. If I select the top part, you select that part, and if I select the bottom part, you move that part. That's how constraints work in Toon Boom Harmony, and I haven't put any VPEGs on her at all for this function because I wanted to make it as seamless as I possibly could. So if I want to move her elbow, I can move it like that. If I want to move her hand, I just grab the hand and I move that around like that. If I want to move the pelvis, I can move that around like that. If I want to move, let me just go here. If I want to move the feet, they behave in exactly the same way. The knee behaves in the same way. It's fairly self-explanatory. I have a graphic here. Let me just make this bigger and make that smaller so that we can just get the relevant information here. I have a graphic here that represents her body, and I've put checkboxes on various parts of an approximate to show the sort of controls that you might want to turn on and off depending on what you're doing. So we'll start from the top. The central part is a set of 3 VPEGs which allow easy manipulation of certain functions on her necklace. Not all of them. If you want the complete set, you just click that and then show Deformers, and then that's the complete lot. But I thought it was particularly useful to just have these 3 because that's the type of thing you want to manipulate the most. So the middle one allows me to do this, and these 2 allow me to sort of shift the necklace up and down like that for extra, flexibility. These little stick things, by the way, if I select the one on the outermost part, allows me to move all 3, whereas if I move any of the child ones, they're able to do that kind of thing. When I was animating her, it barely came up except to animate all 3 like that, but it gave you a little bit more flexibility if you wanted to move them around. If I want to move the belt, by the way, I can just grab the center part, and the belt gives the impression that it's kind of moving around in 3D space. I was able to do something clever with the pivots to make it sort of move to the correct part just by moving around. If you pull it up too far, the illusion breaks, so it has a limit of where it can go, but that should be more than enough for the sort of work you need to do. There we go there. If you need to move, by the way, before we go into all of this, if you need to move body parts backwards and forwards in Z, you should be able to get it perfectly comfortably, but you have to be mindful that there is not a breaking point, but a point where you have to shuffle things around perhaps a bit more than normal. So by holding down Alt and forward and back, you've got that, but then of course the hand breaks, so then you have to move that forward, and then you've got it there. You see what I mean? You've just got that certain amount of shuffling to do. And the same thing here. If I move it back several times, there we go, and do that there. I can even move it behind her body like that. Just do it several times, enough that it can do it. And then I think, come on, there we go. Oops, there we go. So eventually you'll get it, but there's quite a lot of layering to go with here. So if it doesn't do it with like one press, you may have to do it several times. Takes a bit of getting used to. It's a little bit different to a conventional puppet because there are an awful lot of layers for this thing to move in and out. As a side note, for future limbs, I've made this process a lot simpler. But at the time when I was creating the Empress, she was a sort of testing point, so there are certain things that I know now I can do better. But anyway, so that one works for the necklace. These ones here are things that turn on deformation scales, and this is essentially an easy way of manipulating muscles on the character like that. So these are things which I am starting to get into a lot now. They are initially a little bit of a tricky thing to understand, but once you get it, they are actually fairly simple to use. So it allows me to just fatten and thin the muscles depending on what she's doing manually if I want to. Same thing with that. There we go, that sort of thing. Try and keep the entrance point from a limb by eye as close as you can, but the other stuff, I think you can sort of manipulate that and all sorts of things. There are things you can do. I think you can pull that. Whoops, you can pull that one back. There we are, like that. So you've got a certain amount of control over that sort of thing like that. So these turn those on and off, you see. Now these diamond-shaped VPEGs allow me to twist this part up or down depending on the sort of look that you're wanting the glove to do. So it's just an easy way of getting quick foreshortening on the arm. If I was bending it right back like that, that makes no sense, but but if she was fighting bad guys and she had magic powers. But for if she was doing that, for example, and you wanted to move the glove forwards, you would do this, and then you'd probably move that forwards a little bit just to make sure that it's in front of that blue bit there. So that's that sort of thing. There you go, like that. Just pop that back and move that down a little bit. So all these can do is up and down, just to give you that kind of flexibility there, like that. Now Did I do that one? Oh yeah, this also has the ability to fatten and thin. It really is. I just wanted that extra level of customizability because you never know when you're going to need it. Now, these two are what's known as FK and IK for the hands. So at the moment, when I move her body around, the hands stay completely dead to wherever they are. And that's actually really useful if you're doing prop work, if she's picking something up or leaning against a wall. You just put her hand where you want it to be. Let me just do that now, in fact. There you go. Imagine she was leaning against a wall like that, and then she just wants to move away. Oops, move away like that. You know, how easy is that? It's fantastic. She's even holding onto her hip with minimal animation effort. But sometimes you don't want that. You want the arm to move with the body, in which case you slot it down like that. You may have to reposition it a little bit because it uses a different set of keyframes. But now when I move the body around, it moves with the body rather than against it. So it very much depends on what you're doing. If she was running, I would have it on forward kinematics. But if I wanted it, you know, leaning against a wall, I would do it this way. There you are, like that. Now let's turn those off. Same sort of thing for the legs. You've got the ability to fatten her thighs and things like that. Same sort of thing with her boots. You've got the ability to do that kind of thing. So depending on whether they're further away or, you know, whatever. Same sort of thing on the boots. You can fatten and thin them. And then you've got FK and IK for the feet. So again, with this added, her foot moves around, whereas when it's upwards, it stays planted on the floor. So these little things are quite useful, I have to say. By a little tip as well, if you want two things to sort of be attached, if you just select them using Shift, it can sort of make her hand be sort of attached to her hips. It's kind of a nice little feature there. Now then, moving on to her head. Oh, actually, not just yet. We'll explain this bit as well, more body stuff. So I've divided the body into three parts. You've got the head, the upper torso and the lower torso. The upper torso can twist around like that and still maintain the body parts in roughly the same positions. Just make sure that in the middle part, that what they call it, necklace is flipping at the moment, and you just want to make sure that you've got it in the right place. But there we go, that's the only little funny thing about that. And then of course you've got the same deal with her lower body there as well. And if you want to move the entire body around, you can use this. So you've got quite a lot of flexibility there. Just be mindful occasionally of little bits like that you can pop back really easily just using arrow keys like that. So it's not a big deal really. And little things like this you may need to sort of push backwards and forwards. There we go, like that, you see. So again, it gives you most of the control, but then you'll have to go in and just tidy up a little bit and perhaps move an element around to taste, that sort of thing. Now then, the head. Now the head comprises, let me just go in there quite a bit. There we go. The head comprises of a standard master controller with a twist. So if you notice, when I let go of this, her head shifts a little bit more. And that was because I wanted to have the ability of shifting her neck manually as well as automatically. And the only way I could do that was using an expression. And expressions calculate their figure, so to speak, after something has been moved. So that's why you get that little shunt when it sort of finally got its result. Don't need to go into too much detail here, but suffice to say the controls to move her neck around will be shown in a second. She gets to a certain point here, and there's a sort of like block where her head goes into as extreme a sort of 3/4 as possible, and then it clunks to profile like that. Now I'm adding this bit because I had to make a little adjustment to the nose preview node just to make it work, because I realised something had gone wrong. But when you see her in certain poses, her face looks slightly wrong when it comes to her nose, but it actually will render quite correctly. If you render the image, it actually cuts off certain bits of it and makes it look much, much better than the preview gives the impression it does. You see that huge great lump underneath, and then here it's actually properly done. So what actually is happening here is a certain amount of line adjustment is happening under the hood, and the way to get this to look nice on the render on the OpenGL view is if you press the node button here, the nose button here. Now you just have to make sure that you've pressed play or sort of adjust it a little bit sometimes. But it will give you a sort of preview of that area. It only works where the camera is. If I were to move the camera over, let me just show you how this behaves. Come out of here a few more times. Come on, there we go. If I were to move the camera over so that her nose is not visible, you'll notice the nose also slows down. But it's really obvious there. It starts it there and then doesn't bother there. It's using what's known as a render preview node, and it only renders the nose where it needs to be. When I've been animating it, I haven't actually even turned that on. It's occasionally if you want to see what something might well look like, but I haven't ever found that it's come up as anything useful. So, that's how that works. Also, the way that her body is arranged, let me just move her head into something a bit more attractive. There we go. Her body is arranged in 3 main areas, and that's so that if you like a particular pose or you like part of a particular pose, you can actually copy and paste the keyframe into the library for later use. By subdividing into these 3 main areas, the head, the upper body and the lower body, you've got the most flexibility for a character. So if your character's sort of holding something but then walking, well, the walking animation and the legs and everything can be copied, but the holding things animation can be copied in from something else. So it just gives you that extra little flexibility there of combining animation with animation. Same with the head. All the head stuff is contained there, all the upper body stuff there, and all the lower body. So it's a way of, splitting up the character into this much easier to understand color-coded area. So that's the reason why these stripes exist. And now back to the main tutorial. This is controllable as well. If you want to move her tiara around at any point, you can do that. And it's sort of fully attached. So again, it uses a similar technology that's in the belt. So that gives you quite a lot of freedom to move things around. Now let's have a look. Now here's the controls for the head, and we have one here for the eyes, and that allows me to just sort of squish and give me a bit of extra control. Incidentally, these eyes have a set of drawing substitutions, like all the eyes, all the sort of body parts do in this puppet, like the hands and the feet. So that gives you a set of blinks to work with. So you just sort of click between those, but you've also got the added interest of doing a little bit of that, a little bit of wiggling around with the controller there. Oops. Let me turn that off. You have a set of deformers in the eyebrows, which you can customize to any particular expression you want. So you wanted to make her look a little bit sort of quizzical or DreamWorks eyes, you can do that. The middle button gives you a set of controls for her jaw and things like that. Let me just turn this off and show you what she can do. So just by holding the jaw, using the same sort of technology as I've done in the arms and legs and things, you have the ability of her going like that. So that's the first thing. It makes her look more fleshy than just a normal character, and it gives you a lot of control over that area. But the nice thing as well, it also has the ability to be resculpted using these dots. So I can, if I want to, slightly resculpt her and make that shape a little bit nicer there. I can puff out her cheeks a little bit more there. I can do all sorts of things. I can make them bigger, smaller, rotate them, all sorts of things. I wouldn't touch these top ones quite so much, but again, it just gives you that extra freedom to just tighten that line if you need to. But most of the time you don't. Again, it's better not to touch things than to touch things, but if you do need an extra bit of shaping there and whatever, that's available to you. Now, these diamond shapes, which are strangely not aligned to the rest of the head, but they do, it kind of works. These allow you to kind of manipulate and alter the shape of the mouth. So if I wanted to sort of stick the cheek part up a little bit here, I could do that. I could rotate a little bit. I can sort of push that one back and everything else. And then we've got this icon as well, and this buys into what I said earlier about moving the head. So say for example I was moving the head front on like that, and I wanted to do that sort of neck waggle thing that seemed to be like, you know, Charlie's Angels and that sort of thing. No you didn't, that kind of thing. Or you just want her to investigate a little bit further forward with her neck or that sort of thing. All you do is you click on this symbol here, and then I would use the arrow keys to do this because you get an instant response, and using shift as well, it's up to you. But I can then just shift that over to give her neck a little bit of pivoting sass, you see, that kind of thing. And that sort of stuff is not cancelled out by the master controller. That's the benefit of this. So once you've got her in an investigative position, you can still move that, and it's not going to cancel out the movement of the neck. So let's just move that back a bit now. There we go. So she can look indignant there, inquisitive, and then, oh my god, me? You know, that kind of thing. So that's kind of useful. That's kind of a new feature that I worked on. It's not as good as I'd wanted it to be, but it's the only way I could get it to work with expressions. So if you're interested in expressions, have a look at the book. Pretty much the principles there are the principles that I used in the making of her. There you go, that sort of thing. She has two expressions. She has smiling and just sort of plain. So go up or down depending on what sort of set of mouths you want to use. She has this as well, R and L, and the reason they're the wrong way round is because that's the way Toon Boom seems to work it. It's, you know, the right side was, you know, the right side and the left side. It's a bit complicated, but the way you do her hair, let's just get this into position where you can see what I'm doing. If I just select the hair and I hit the Show Deformers button, you get this. Now, which one is it? This line, there we go. I'm just going to move her hair over to there like that, so it's swishing in the wind. We don't need to see these deformers for this now. But to make it sort of flow with the air, what we can do is shift click R and L, so they're both selected, and then using arrow keys shift left and right, I can, I don't have to have shift held down, but to have left and right, and I can create a key that will create a position for her wave to go in. And if I were to, for example, I don't know how well this is going to animate, by the way, this might look, in fact I'm not going to show you because it could be really bad, but if I if I create another key here and just create a key there and then just shift over a few times, shift over a few times. You have to have the cursor on the same screen as the R and L, by the way, to do this. So let's say I've done that a few times. And then if I tween that, it should, there you are, you see, do a lovely wave of hair flowing in the wind. And you've still got the ability to move it around like that if you want to, and the wave will still be intact, which is really nice. Incidentally, this brings us on to speed. Because at the moment, as you can notice, when I'm clacking away here or playing it back, it's dropping quite a lot of frames. And it's all right once it sort of plays back the first few times, that's okay, but it's still annoying. I've got this fast button here, and what that does is it stops, I'll just turn the deformers off. It stops a few of the cutters. We're not talking about a huge amount of cutters here, but we're talking just enough for it to be a problem. So what I can do is just press that, and you'll notice that not only have we got this great big red area here, but also slight differences in the hands and a little bit in the head. So it's a good enough working representation to work from, but some of the lines and everything aren't quite as they will render. I mean, certainly this big thick line here will not come through when you actually render it. This is the render view, and this is the, you know what I mean. So for a fast view, it does give you a lot. It's a lot faster, and you can sort of scrub much better, and you can move things around and all that sort of stuff. So that makes it a lot easier to work with, you know. I will be mindful that in Harmony 21, it might still be useful to have the fast button on, but actually I've discovered that Harmony 21 is so optimized that she actually behaves almost identically. I haven't had a chance to play around with her in terms of time line with Harmony 21, so I don't know how that behaves. But certainly in terms of manipulating the character, she is incredibly fast with Harmony 21, so that was nice to know. But for the rest of us who don't have Harmony 21, she's just as good in Harmony 20 if you turn on fast, and then she manipulates a lot faster. So that's why I put it in there. There we go, that's much better. So I think that's it. Oh, the only other thing is that pretty much every part of her, well, not every part, a lot of her has deformers, but they're not envelope deformers. So I've got a deformer in her arm, which just gives you a way to kind of realign certain parts of her, or sort of change the tension and you know what I mean, that sort of side of her as well. She's got in her torso the ability to just manipulate that and move that around a little bit. So you've got that level of control if you need it to get you out of some tight spots. But most of her deformers are there. She has buttocks for her legs because that's the way that they're constructed. So be mindful of this extra area, this dark area here. That was necessary to make some of it work. If you want the legs to go in front of her midriff here, this has a set of deformers on it as well, and what you do is you just sort of sculpt them to make it look as if the leg is suddenly in front like that. So that's the way you do that. And then when you've got the leg, oops, just selecting the wrong thing, turn on fast, that's better, come on, that's it. And then when you've got the leg where you want it, I think you have to press this a few times and then get that. There you go, like that. You do have to kind of sculpt and move certain bits of her around. So there's her buttocks, which also have envelope deformers in. So there is a certain amount of sculpting with certain areas to get out of this particular little issue. I think if I'd had more time to play with, I probably could have solved this problem. But as it is, this is the only way that I could see to work it out. And for the most part, it's fine. It's just like 1 or 2 frames that you need to sort of sculpt to. I mean, that's more or less all right, it's particularly if she was moving very quickly. But I mean, how many times is she doing that unless she's doing the can, or kicking an enemy or something? So, you know what I mean? It's just... The main thing with her is that there's a lot of sort of fiddling about, really, to get things to the right places, but there's not an awful lot to do, and then you can just sort of sculpt and just get those extra little tiddly things, but that's it. It's not not having to re-sculpt an entire thing. For most stuff, she's actually really fast. Why does she look like that? So I think that's pretty much all of her. I can't think of anything else that she needs to... Obviously, I'll move that one back. Come on. Is that... come on, you annoying. Hang on, what's going on there? It's probably because the hair's really far back. I'm having to... There we go. So yeah, occasionally on some pictures you're going to have to do that. But I have to say, working with humanoid characters before, she animates, considering how realistic her movements are, a lot faster than if I were having to sort of go in there and have to sort of sculpt every little bit, because for the most part her muscles do that automatically. It's just a few little moments where you just need to be a little bit more mindful and get things in the right positions, you know what I mean? But yeah, well, I hope you enjoy working with her. She's a bit of a labour of love, but I did want to really tackle a more realistic character, because they are the sort of thing that people sometimes want to do, and they are notoriously difficult to do because of the sheer complexity and the logic of how they go together and everything else. And it's a bit like an uncanny valley. If you do one bit wrong, it's far more noticeable than with a cartoony character. So, you've always got that element of having to sort of compete. If you ever needed to put a deformer into a part of her body, then of course you've got the ability to do that. But I've tried to only put deformers in areas that I thought were important. But, you know, since when am I going to need a breast that does anything other than be breast shaped? You know what I mean? I can manipulate a certain amount of it just with transforming, things like that, or rotation. So, you know what I mean? I didn't want to do too much. Oh, I've got to put a curved deformer on here and a curved deformer on there, because it actually really slows things down. And a big part of what I wanted to do with this character was to make a fast, or reasonably fast, complicated character. So I hope I've managed to do that, and I hope you get a lot of pleasure out of her and learn as much as you can from her construction and how to animate and all that sort of stuff. Good luck, and thank you so much for funding my research into all of this. I'm nowhere near done. I've got lots more things I want to research and put into the book. There are, in terms of the book, there are techniques which I've done on other tests which aren't available on her that will be in the book, such as texturing and line work and all this sort of stuff. But the way her limbs are constructed in particular will be in the book under the flesh section. And as I say, certain elements of it are much more refined. They've been cleaned up, made simpler and easier to use. So I'm really happy about that. But as she stands, she's fun, she's sassy, and I really like her, and I hope you do too. Thanks a lot, and speak to you soon. Bye-bye.